Beautiful. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to Wild Digital. As we all know, it's virtual, and I just saw the number. We hit a record number of registration. We've got over 1,000 registrations this year. So look, that's been absolutely incredible. I just heard Lenore say that there's a women in tech like physical meetup. So I'm super jealous. I didn't even realize that there were parts of this that were physical, but that'll be great. And so what I thought I'd kick off is have an honest chat with one of my really good friends in the sector. We've known each other now almost a decade. Tom, who's the founder of Gobi, and if you don't know about Gobi, you should. They're probably one of the most prolific VCs in the region. Tom's based in KL, as you can see from the background. They've got over $1 billion US in asset under management across multiple funds, focusing on China and Southeast Asia. Tom is probably his latest claim to fame is backing Eric Cheng at Carson, which became Malaysia's first unicorn. I think Tom found that company very early on. So what I thought I'd do today is, I don't know if you have noticed, but if you walk into any Starbucks or any Coffee Bean across Southeast Asia, I guarantee you half of the meetings that are happening in the coffee shop is someone looking for money and someone looking to invest money, right? And whether they're VCs or angels or pretending to be investors, or whether they're entrepreneurs or college kids, right? Like, you just see this everywhere. And so I think, I get so many people asking me, like, what do VCs really think? What do entrepreneurs really think? Like when a VC gives you a term sheet, what does it really mean? And so on and so forth. So what I thought, Tom, is, we've known each other so long. Why don't we have a really honest chat? Let's ignore the fact there's 1,000 people watching this. And I thought, let's break it up into 3 phases. I want to have a really honest chat, and I'll speak from an entrepreneur's lens, and you'll speak from a VC's lens on phase 1, which is kind of everything to do to get money from a VC. So the fundraising, the pitching, the deck. And then phase 2 is when the money's closed, like then how does the relationship evolve? Like the board and the interaction and budgets and plans. And then phase 3, which not everybody's been through, but I think a lot of people are starting to go through, is exits. And what is that typical tension between a VC and an entrepreneur? Because like an entrepreneur will always say, hey, I want to build this thing forever. And is that really true or not? Whereas a VC will say, hey, I'm going to back you forever. And is that really true or not? Because legally a VC's got to give money back to their investors every 5 to 7 years. So Tom, I thought we'd have a really honest chat and get straight into it. What do you think?
I think, Patrick, first of all, I'm delighted to be here. And I think nothing would be more interesting, maybe for all the audience to hear, than, kind of a fly on the wall between an entrepreneur and a VC. Absolutely.
All right. So, Tom, I'm going to kick it off. So, entrepreneurs are always very casually dressed. I actually put on a collared shirt for this conversation with you. If it wasn't with you, I'd just be wearing like literally my pajamas and shorts and jumping straight into the goal. And VCs are always very seriously dressed, right? And so my first question to you is, are you wearing pants or shorts right now?
I'm actually, we're doing this virtually, so I'm actually in my workroom, and I've got shorts on. But I put on, coat out of respect for the audience. And so Patrick, that's always an interesting question for me, is when you're meeting an entrepreneur, are entrepreneurs more impressed if you're kind of trying to dress like an entrepreneur, sneakers, kind of the t-shirt, or do entrepreneurs, when they meet a VC, are they expecting somebody coming in like a jacket and shirt?
Yeah, it's a damn good question, right? You see that a lot. I think you see entrepreneurs are generally very casually dressed. VCs are a little bit more seriously dressed, and then bankers. If any of you met bankers, and I apologize, they are the most impeccably dressed people out there all the time. I think at the end of the day, I think I'm speaking on behalf of kind of most entrepreneurs in general that are raising money. Like, I don't really care how he or she is dressed, as long as you have money and you're willing to spend it.
That's awesome. And so you raised a really interesting question, Patrick. Like, when we meet entrepreneurs, is it better to schedule those first meetings at a Starbucks, or is it at the office? And if they come to the office, are entrepreneurs really impressed if you have a really big office, or do they prefer more of a casual, the VC vibe, or do they like that PE where you've got like multi-million-dollar paintings on the wall, wood-lined leather chairs? Does that say anything about the VC firm to an entrepreneur, the office setting?
Yeah, I would say, once again, like every time I've raised money, it never has mattered to me what the office looked like, as long as you have money and you're willing to invest that money. I have been to PE firm offices with lots of marble and fancy, like I've been to a few PE offices where the boardroom would be bigger than the office of the startup. And yeah, that is kind of intimidating. But at the end of the day, if the money's there, like why not? I'll tell you what's interesting, and what I'm speaking from an entrepreneur, like every time we had an investor or VC visit our office, we would put on a show. Like there'd be an email around that would go to everyone in the company saying, investors are coming to the office today. Please make everything look clean. Please put up big signs with our vision and our metrics. Please make sure all the metrics are looking up. Please make sure that you're in very interesting looking discussion. So we would literally put on a show for when the VC walks in, and the VC will go, wow, there's so much energy and vibe in your office. They don't realize that we've just coerced 10 people to make it look like they're having an informal meeting, in the lobby. So I think that happens a lot from the entrepreneur side. I was just kind of sense from the VC, do you ever notice that or realize that the entrepreneurs are putting on a show when you come visit their office?
It's interesting you mentioned that. In China once, we were looking at it was a studio, animation studio. And the same thing when we found out, we went in, it was all the computers, people are sitting there. And that's why it's very important to do follow-up due diligence. Because we literally went 2 weeks later and the whole place was empty. We found out that they'd all been hired and all the computers were rented. So the people typing in, they were just typing in, gibberish. So yeah, I think VCs understand some of it is staged. Yeah. It's just like when you're doing a real estate showing, right? The agent will always try to put the best, and so we get that. But yeah, that's why follow-up due diligence is always good. Yeah.
So here's a question I've always wondered. Speaking as an entrepreneur trying to raise money, and I probably sat in at least 1,000 meetings pitching and trying to raise money. What if you had to force rank? What's more important to you, the business plan and business model, or the entrepreneur?
Oh boy, I think they both go hand in hand, right, Patrick? I think if you could have you could be the greatest entrepreneur, but if your business plan right now is around selling beepers, right? Most people don't even know what beepers are, or answering machines, right? You could be the greatest entrepreneur, but that's probably not a good sector. And I don't care how good the business model is; it's just not going to work, right? On the other hand, you could be in the hottest sector right now, but if you don't have the credibility or you don't have the track record, it's going to be hard as well. So it really is, I think, it's a combination of the two, right? Right entrepreneur in the right sector with credibility, I think is really the key.
Yep. Now tell me about the first meeting, the first pitch. And I think a lot of early stage entrepreneurs get quite nervous about this part. Is how important is that first meeting? If someone comes across as a little bit nervous and a little bit shy, does it make a difference, or is that first meeting not as important as you think? If the numbers are good, the business plan is good, you know what I mean? How important is that the first date, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, so from our standpoint, we understand for a lot of entrepreneurs or just even seasoned. I mean, when you come for the first meeting, and that's why we try to keep it casual sometimes. You go to a Starbucks, you want to lower that. Look, it's not the SATs or the Gaokao in China. It's not like, oh my God, you have one shot, you take the test. If you don't score, you don't get into Tsinghua or you don't get into Harvard. No, it is a journey, right? The first meeting is only the intro, right? The first meeting is really, let's get to a second meeting. Nobody's making an investment decision on the spot oh my God, because everybody reads about it. It's oh, I met the guy and in 5 minutes he said there was a karmic vibe, cosmic vibe, and I gave the guy a check. There are instances of that, but look, for most VCs, the first meeting is all what it is. It gets you to a second meeting, and it's a process. There'll probably be another 10, 15 meetings that happen.
Okay, yeah. So back to that point, this is interesting, right? We always want to close around fast. Who doesn't, right? And every time we meet someone, we always ask every VC or every investor saying, how quick can you move? Because, things are moving fast. And 100% of people have always said, we can move really fast. So number one, everyone always says they can move really fast, but the reality is I've never seen anyone move fast. I've never seen anyone go from first meeting to a term sheet to lead a round in under 6 weeks. So my question to you is, number one, why do guys like yourself always tell the entrepreneurs that you can move fast? And number two, why can nobody move fast? What is the fastest you've gone from first meeting to cosmic vibe to a term sheet to lead the round as opposed to support someone else's round?
Yeah, you know what? I think, Patrick, that's a great question. And I think when they say move really fast is there's really two parts of it. One is, can you get the partnership to actually say, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to commit X dollars. And there's all these kind of investment committee meetings, due diligence that have to happen. Where VCs can really move fast is, look, if you get senior or the partnership behind, they can call a meeting and go, okay, you know what, we're going to back you. It's done, right? That decision's done. Now, where it usually slows down, then, Patrick, is all the paperwork. It's usually the entrepreneur in the company that doesn't have the account ready. They haven't passed their resolutions. They don't have the rest of the round done. They don't have the rest of the documentation.
From first meeting to term sheet to lead a round, what's the fastest you
guys?
Well,
look, the thing that VCs have control over is, hey, we can make the call on, okay, we're going to go in. That's one decision. The mechanics then of dispersing that money into the startup's account is kind of out of our control, right? So your question on, hey, 6 weeks, soup to nuts, from when we meet the entrepreneur to when the cash reaches, your bank account. There's a part of that journey where that's out of the VC's control, just to be fair. But you're right, a lot of VCs will say that and then they just delay because, everybody is looking at everybody else, right? Yeah. It's that signaling. And I'm sure the biggest frustration for entrepreneurs is, who's the lead? Because everybody kind of, who's going to jump first? When that first person goes in, everybody else wants to come in. And then usually it's Patrick, I'm sure you're very familiar with the dynamic, right? When you're raising the round, man, you're lonely. Nobody's ready to, everybody's like, okay, everybody's looking around. The first guy who shows conviction, then everybody else wants to come in. And then when everybody else starts piling in, then the entrepreneur's in control, right? You start turning away money. But that's why it's always, that's why there are less guys who are leads, right? Who can show the conviction and say, I'm coming in. I don't care about what anybody else thinks.
Yeah.
Most VCs want to look around and see what are the other guys saying. And then, there's that critical mass, right, Patrick, where everybody's all of a sudden there's a rush and then the round's oversubscribed. Then you're turning away people, right?
Yep. We hear that a lot because I always ask people, can you move fast? They always say yes. And nobody does. And then number two, I always go, do you have the ability to lead rounds? And about 75% of people go, yes, we can lead rounds. And guess what? You can never get them to lead the round for whatever reason. So,
well, and again, that's something I would suggest to entrepreneurs, right? Because you need that first person to believe you. Yeah. And there are things entrepreneurs can do for leads is, offer, a sweetener, a warrant or whatever, right? Because lead investors are rare. Those are the guys that are saying, look, regardless of anybody else, I'm willing to come in. A lot of VCs are they're not necessarily playing the hand, they're playing the player, right? Like the poker term, right? So entrepreneurs have ways around that as well. Hey, so Patrick, let me ask you a question, okay? Let me ask you a question right now, because I think this is a very timely topic. Many VCs like ourselves are really putting an emphasis on ESG, right? And so as an entrepreneur, I've always wondered, when you look at, every entrepreneur tells us like, oh, we're valuation agnostic. We're really looking for what you bring more than money, right? And so I've always wondered, when you look at the spectrum of what a VC can bring, whether it's sector expertise, a brand, geographical coverage, right? The human chemistry, and then also ESG principles, do entrepreneurs really care, or is valuation the only important thing? Like, who's going to give me the money?
What do you think the answer is?
I think it's whoever's giving you the highest valuation, right?
Hell yeah, right. And I mean, and I'll tell you a funny thing. Like when you're in the charm offensive and you're trying to raise money from VCs, right? Like you'll look at like a company that the VC has backed before. So let's say it's called Company X. You'll almost start the meeting or the welcome email. It's like, I love what you did with Company X. I love how you were instrumental. Like, I've been so inspired by Company X. That's why I would love to work with you as the VC, right? So I think entrepreneurs do a lot of this kind of flattery and pitching. But I think at the end of the day, right, the entrepreneur just wants to know who's going to give me the highest valuations on the best entrepreneur friendly terms, right? And I think if someone's giving a valuation 10% less with the same terms, but they have a dramatically better ESG policy, I'm pretty sure the majority of entrepreneurs are going to go with the higher valuation.
Oh, okay, okay. Do you see that changing in the future, though?
I think if you're building a business model that is very in tune with the ESG, or whether it's an environmental business model, GovTech or something like that. Yeah, so I think it is important. But I think if you're just building a run-of-the-mill consumer internet business, I think at the end of the day, once again, the entrepreneur wants to know who's going to give me the money fast. Because once again, the entrepreneur doesn't want to spend time fundraising. They want to go and build the business. They want to go and deliver on all the things that they're promising. So I think it always comes down to best valuation, fastest, like who can close the fastest with the most entrepreneur-friendly terms.
All right, let me ask a follow-up question. So for you, Patrick, you've done so much fundraising, you've met so many VCs. What's more important to you as an entrepreneur? Is it the brand of the VC, or is it actually the person that's going to be on your case? So is it more important to have like somebody who's been through wars, or is it somebody very passionate, may have that sector expertise? Because we're seeing a proliferation of VCs. You know, VCs, many new VCs starting up, and what they're pitching is they're entrepreneur friendly, or they have a particular sector expertise, may not have gone through many exits. So from an entrepreneur standpoint, what's more important? Is it like an old line brand that's instantly recognizable, or is it actually the individual who's actually working with you as you build out the company? And that could be a lesser known VC, right?
Yeah. So if you go to the Catcha Group website, our tagline is actually entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And I think we have a thesis, or we have a belief that an ex-entrepreneur can add tremendous value if they've built something in a similar case. And back to your point, I think the brand of the firm is important, but I think at the end of the day, it's the person that you build the relationship with, the person and that brand that represents you, right? So it's because that's the person who's going to have your back. That's the person that you're going to get advice from. That's the person you're going to very likely sit on your board, right? So I think it really comes down to the relationship with the person at that firm. Like, I mean, when I think about all the people that have backed us and the different firms, like, yeah, in many cases, we've only ever met the individual who runs the Asia office. Like, we've never met anyone in the US, or like, and that's just the way it is sometimes, right? So I think it really comes down to the person that you have the relationship with. And if it comes down to the person you have the relationship with, more so often it's someone who's been in the trenches or has been on a similar company with a similar strategy. So you can get genuine learnings from that person.
Hey, so Patrick, I want to ask you a question now. So this is interesting. I always get asked by many younger folks wanting to be VCs. And I'm going to throw this question to you because I don't know how to answer it, because they always ask me, they're like, hey, Tom, how do I get into VC? Do I start by joining a VC firm right out of school? Or is it better to have been an entrepreneur and have real operating experience? And so my question is, as an entrepreneur, when you're bringing on a VC or somebody as your board member, do you want somebody, is it better because to bring someone your own age, so it's easier to talk to them? Or is it better to bring in someone who has different experiences or real operating experience? For all the young guys trying to be VCs, this is an interesting question. From Patrick, from your standpoint, what do entrepreneurs value? I mean, do they want somebody with a consulting experience, accounting, banking, or do they prefer somebody who's actually operated a company? How do you view that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in terms of someone who wants to be a VC, I think you go to the Gobi website and then you can apply to be an intern. So you could be, I think you could be Tom's like coffee maker, right? But I think in a world where VCs are people with capital are now prolific, I think there's a big value in that either the person assisting you or the firm in general, have relationships that are important to you and have feedback. And what I've found from most board members that have really been helpful to us, it's never been, oh, I think you should build your business this way. Because look, at the end of the entrepreneur, this is your business. This is your baby. Like it's so hard for some random board member to tell you how to build your business. I think what we've found most helpful is the people who have a wide database of contacts. And so like there could be a business that, hey, I'm looking for a CTO. And someone's like, oh my God, perfect. I know 5 CTOs. Here they are, and I vouch for them. Or, hey, I'm looking for someone to lead the next round that can write a 9-figure check. Okay, great. Here's 5 people that I know. So what I've found most valuable is board members who provide contacts, who provide a Rolodex. right? And so then back to your point about what should someone do? I think if someone wants to be a great VC, I think it's not so much. I'm not looking for someone to tell me how to run a business because that's my job. I'm running the business. But I'm really looking for if someone has access to another 20 individuals that can make or break the business, whether it's funding, customers, or hiring, or go to market strategy in another country. Like if he or she has those relationships that we, the company, don't have, that's invaluable to us. So I would say that if anybody wants to be a VC, I think it's not about who has the biggest checkbook. I think it's about who brings the most relationships to the table, and that's history, that's networking, that's going to physical conferences, and just having such a wide Rolodex. And if you think about a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have time to network, right? Like you spend half your life raising money, which isn't fun, and then you spend half your life trying to deliver on the money that you raise. Like you don't have time to go and build relationships and networking and contacts. So I always find if a VC can say, hey, Patrick, you want to go to Indonesia? I recommend this guy to be your country head. Or here's a lawyer in the country, like blah, 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 blah. Like you just saved 10 hours of my life. So for me, it really comes down to having a wealth of contacts that the company or the entrepreneur doesn't have.
That's fantastic. Yep.
So let's talk about the next phase, which is where, assuming the money's raised and the entrepreneur and the VC are now in so-called bed together. Here's something that's always bothered me, Tom, and I would like two things. Whenever entrepreneurs pitch, so whenever VCs pitch entrepreneurs as to why they should have them on board, I always hear this time and time again. Number one, the pitch from the VC is always, I believe in you and your vision and your company so much. The reason you should choose me is that when things get tough, I will be there for you no matter what. Like everybody has a bad quarter. Everybody has a bad year. Everybody has to do a little pivot to the product. Don't worry. When the shit hits the fan, I'll be there for you. I've found more often than not that not to be true. When the shit hits the fan, the VC is saying, we need a down round. We need to fire the co-founder. We need to change the CFO. Like, I know I said I'd be there for you, but right now your numbers are down and you need to change. You need to make drastic changes to your business now if you ever want to see my money again. So number one is do VCs really believe that when they say that? And then number two is VCs always go, I believe in your vision. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to this is like within 10 years, you're going to disrupt the entire TAM. You're going to build a unicorn. But then about 3 or 4 years into the journey, every VC does a little knock. And I go, yep, what is it? Hey, also I need to raise another fund. My fund's coming to the end of life. Your valuation's up 3x. Can we talk about selling some secondary, or can we talk about engineering an exit on the company? And I was going, yeah, but I thought you told me you're going to believe in me forever. Why do you all of a sudden want to sell some shares?
Patrick, I think those are great points. And again, they're driven by this reality, which I think, some big VCs like Sequoia are trying to address, right? Which is, this limited, we say we're long-term, but ultimately, we have bosses as well, which are our investors, right? So that is a dynamic, again, that is changing. But you're absolutely right. I think the only way to ensure that is to ask prior cases. So again, as a VC, we do so much due diligence. And I think it's a great point. Entrepreneurs should do the same thing. What you just asked should be a due diligence question asked by every aspiring entrepreneur on the VC they're about to take money from. Give me examples where you actually supported your companies. Now, I say that with some confidence because we actually just went through COVID, where there was actually a mad rush. It was almost like every company in our portfolio needed funding. So in that case, again, I wish we could fund all of them, but you have to allocate. You had to decide who you could save and who was and it's harsh. I remember when COVID first started, we spent months. I mean, it was literally, we never worked so hard because we were deciding, which companies we could allocate precious capital because we didn't have unlimited capital.
Yeah.
But I am happy to say that in those instances, there were many that we stepped up. Now, where it can be, and just to be fair, I think what you said was fair, but I'll tell you a pet peeve of VCs is, they come to us like, I need this, it'll be a one-time only. And then all of a sudden they come back another, it's like, that's it. And we make it clear, look, we can't go back to the well, we've reserved, you're drawing down on all of it. And then they come back and say, well, you know what? I said last time I'd never come back again. I need more. So it kind of goes both ways, just to be fair. And we've had instances. And again, then when you've exceeded kind of your prudent man rules, the allocations, that gets hard too. And then you got to think about, hey, do we use it from another? Do we do it from another fund? Then you got the conflict of interest with crossover fund investing, and. But you're right. A lot of VCs abandon. We've seen that during COVID. I won't tell you cases, but if anybody wants to talk to me offline, and some of them are the biggest name VCs. They just backed out. Gobi stepped in, and all of a sudden they see the business recover. They want to come back in.
Yeah, and I see it a lot. I find a lot of VCs. They kind of follow the wind, right? The so-called long-term conviction isn't always there. Hey, back to your point about tapping the well. Like I've been in I've been involved in a company that's been 6 months away from breaking even for 7 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go, right?
We're almost there. Two more quarters, we're almost there.
And so, look, in cases like that, I mean, sometimes VC, again, it's hard for us, right? You got the investment committee going, hey, Tom, you believed in these guys. You said that was the last time. And then they come back again. And then the first question will be, well, did they raise any outside capital? And then the entrepreneur, usually it's because they can't raise outside capital, they're coming back to existing and they're coming back to the well again. Yep. And it's really hard. You're like, and then the IC always asks, is like, hey, Tom, I know you love the guy or you love the entrepreneur, but are you drinking too much of your own Kool-Aid? You need to get some outside validation. And so again, that's the conflict for us. But I think that is a fair question.
So last question for me, and then maybe let's talk about kind of how we see the future. Like, you saw Uber and Travis. Travis built an incredible company, and then at some point, his main financial backers started lobbying to remove him. And so I wanted to get a sense from you guys, right? Like the entrepreneurial hustle to get a company off the ground and build it and grow it, right, is sometimes the very different skill set from that's what's needed to run a $1 billion company, right? Managing a $1 billion company and getting something off the ground are different skill sets. Some people can do both, some people can't. And so, and particularly in COVID, you're now seeing a lot of Southeast Asian companies become unicorns, right? And so you're seeing these companies that maybe 3 years ago were Series A companies, right? So it's hustle and putting things together and hiring and product market fit. And now all of a sudden it's a $1 billion company with 1,000 staff and multiple offices and SOPs. And like, I guess my question to you is, what percentage of them, so this is not your fault, but in general, do you think at some point the VC and the board has to have a conversation with the founder and say, hey, at some point we need to talk about switching the entrepreneur out of the CEO role and perhaps bringing in professional management? Like what percent of companies do you think that happens to?
Oh, I think that's a fantastic question, which is basically the whole, great entrepreneurs may not necessarily be great managers or administrators, it's like history, there are great generals, right, who build empires, but they're not necessarily great. They're not good at governing, right? So that transition, I'm just thinking, that's a conversation probably every board needs to sit down and chat with their founders. Right. Yep. I do think a lot of founders can make that transition. We've seen it very successful because the very characteristics that make them great at problem solving, building out teams, it can serve them well if they continue surrounding themselves with better people. But we have seen also cases where entrepreneurs, they just for some reason their style doesn't scale out as the enterprise really, really, really expands out. So that's a great question. I'm not sure anybody has the real answer to that. Yeah.
Have you ever had to have that tough conversation with an entrepreneur and say, hey, maybe it's time to be the chief vision officer as opposed to the CEO?
Oh yeah, we've had that numbers of times. Starting as back as early, as in China, we had those conversations many times. And again, I think in when we first started off in China, and I think this is probably endemic, I think, to a lot of cultures, is hey, the founder feels like it's their company. So if they're not running it, that kind of they feel like it's somehow this loss of face or somehow a lack of validation of their skills, and that's not necessarily the case. I think as VC markets and tech ecosystems mature, and there's so many cases, right, where entrepreneurs step down and do the things they're good at, and they bring in professional managers to actually run it, and they do incredibly well. I mean, the cases of Bill Gates stepping down, the guys at Google, as that starts trickling in, right, to popular consciousness, you started to see also a change in China, right? Including, I mean, you just saw, right, the founder of ByteDance just stepped down.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So,
Exactly.
so you're starting to see that, but you know, and I think in Southeast Asia, and again, I think the cycles are compressing faster here. At least in the beginning, I remember, you know, founder removal in China was extremely difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but then over time, it just became, it would just become people like, hey, listen, oh, I still have an economic interest. My use of time is better spent doing other things to help the company. I don't have to be the CEO. I can still be influential. I'm a shareholder doing a different role.
So if the top 5 LPs at Gobi came together and say, hey, one day, hey, Thomas, we think you should just be the chief innovation officer.
Oh, yeah, at Gobi, yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, those discussions have been, we have those discussions all the time.
Oh, really?
You know?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know,
Congrats on
so,
the new role.
you know, it just, at some point, I mean, it's true as well as a VC, right? You've got younger guys doing a fantastic job. You know, how do you make the room? I mean, it's every organization goes through that. I'm sure it's the same thing at Catcha.
Yep. Yeah, completely. No, my God, if someone wants my job, I'm more than happy to have the conversation. Okay. So Thomas, we got 4 minutes left. Here's my question I want to ask you. I mean, you guys have raised $1 billion in AUM, and that's probably now worth even more today. So you literally have billions to deploy. Where are you looking? Where are you spending your money? Or, you know, some people say, my God, there's opportunities everywhere. But some people say, oh, well, you know what? Like all the easy things are done. Someone's already built property portals. Someone's already bought mobility apps. Someone's already done like digital banking. Like there's nothing good left. Like where do you sit on that spectrum?
Oh, I think, you know, to use a baseball analogy, Patrick, you know, baseball's got 9 innings. I don't even think we're in the first inning. I think for Southeast Asia, right? I think we're on the warm-up deck. You know, people are getting ready. A game is only starting because, you know, I come from the perspective of seeing how it all played out in China, and China's still early. You know, we're nowhere near. It's just, you know, in different markets, you're investing into different areas. For example, China's demographics are changing, right? China's kind of aging. The government focus now is less on these big consumer plays, but really on deep tech, what I would call tech import substitution. And so in China, that's kind of what we're looking at. You know, you're looking at the silver economy. You're really looking at deep tech. How are they making manufacturing more efficient, enterprise, and sustainability, right? These are things we're focusing on there. Southeast Asia is kind of where China was literally 10 years ago. The demographics look very similar. Behavioral technology, adoption, you know, the rise in GDP, disposable income, is on the same track. So Southeast Asia, you're seeing a lot of the same consumer trends, and that's why there's so much money, excitement, I think, in Southeast Asia, because, you know, some of the themes that have been working will continue to work, right? FinTech is going to continue to develop because most of the population in Southeast Asia is still kind of underserved, right? E-commerce, the big horizontal platforms are all set, but all the technologies and support that go around that, around logistics, warehousing, right? Social commerce, still in the early stages.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's tremendous opportunity out there, right? And like every morning, I get conflicted. I'm like, should I be an entrepreneur or should I be a VC? Because like, there's just so many great businesses to be built, and there's at the same time there's so many great entrepreneurs to back, right? And so I agree with you. And I think one of the things, right? Tech always makes things either better, cheaper, faster, right? And just as a consumer, you walk down the street, so many things could be better, so many things could be cheaper, so many things could be faster, right? So I still think there's a long, long way to go. And I think I read something once, and I think I shared this with you the other day, right? Like any industry where the NPS score is ridiculously low, that means customers are not happy with that provider, right? And there's a lot of sectors in Southeast Asia, as in non-digital sectors, that have low NPS scores, right? So all these are right for entrepreneurs to go and build better, cheaper, faster services. So I'm aligned with you. I think I don't even think the baseball game started yet. I think we still got a long way to go.
And so Patrick, here's kind of an interesting thought for the audience. I'd love to get everybody's opinion, but when you see how technology innovation has kind of swept through different industries, one of the last industries now, I call it an industry, is actually kind of government, right? I mean, call it reg tech or whatever, but If you were to put an NPS score on most government agencies, they may not be very high, or they could do better. Now, again, I love our public servants. It's an underappreciated, it's a tough role. But again, I really see, I mean, you think about with COVID, when the US government wanted to get money into people's hands, they were still writing paper checks, sending them to addresses to people who had died.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that be, I mean, why not put that on a fintech platform?
Yep.
Right, and the very question we're talking about in the US about the security of voting systems. I mean, I don't know when the last time you've been to a voting booth, Patrick, but you know, that technology is 1950s technology where you're pulling it's mechanical.
I agree.
You're telling me we can move trillions of dollars of financial transactions online. We cannot ensure the security of a vote through mobile phone?
Yep. It's ridiculous. I'm aligned. NPS scores for government are ridiculous globally. If you start a GovTech fund, let me know.
You know, and then, you know, the bigger areas we haven't even touched upon is this whole thing around climate change and ESG, all opportunities. And I think, and I hope that will only pick up, because we're going to need every entrepreneur to solve these problems.
Yep. 100%. Definitely. Beautiful. Tom, thank you so much for today, man. That was a blast. We could go on and talk about so many more great things, but thank you so much. Everyone at Wild Digital, have a beautiful next 4 days. The speaker list is absolutely incredible. God knows how many unicorns, God knows how many soon to be unicorns, and everyone have a blast. Hope to see you all in person for Wild Digital next year.
Patrick, thank you. Yep. Bye-bye.